As we begin talking about Project 32K, the first thing I want to say is thank you to our small groups. There are certain things that are absolutely essential for the life of a church. To do its ministry well, to care for people well, and small groups, that's exactly what you do. You provide ministry, you care for one another, and you help build this congregation. And so thank you to all of our small groups for the work that you're doing. As we move into Project 32K, you need to know that, again, you are absolutely essential for making this project a reality here at the church and as it reaches out into our community. And I just want to spend a couple of minutes talking to you about what that's going to look like and why it's so essential. And because we are a people who begin always with the text, that's where I want to start with today as we talk about Project 32K. Our text for this entire time is Genesis chapter 12, where it says that we have been blessed by God to be a blessing to the world. And so we want to recognize that as we move into Project 32K, which remembers 32,000 people in our community who don't have a church home, that God has done this amazing thing. He's blessed us over these past years so that we can be an even greater blessing in our community than we've been in the past. We serve a God who's a missionary God. He has a heart for the lost, a heart for those who are disconnected, and He wants to bring them in. If you notice from the words of this slide, it says, the very existence of the Bible is incontrovertible evidence of the God who refused to forsake His rebellious creation, who refused to give up, who was and is determined to redeem and restore fallen creation to its original design for it. The very existence of such a collection of writings testifies to a God who breaks through to human beings, who disclosed Himself to them, who will not leave them unilluminated in their darkness, who takes the initiative in reestablishing broken relationships with us. We have a missionary God who calls on a missionary people. And as we remind ourselves often around here at Evergreen, what that means is that as a church, we are people who are called by God, empowered and equipped by God, and sent into the world by God on His mission. And this mission that we have before us to these 32,000 people in our community, we just want to be able to make that mission as true and powerful as we possibly can. And right now, part of our need to make that mission a reality is to be able to look at our space and to recognize that we are at capacity, that there are people out there that we'd love to invite in and there isn't a place for them. Along with that reality is the fact that if you look at the slide, you'll notice the largest and smallest churches in the United States are the ones that are growing. Middle-sized churches find it difficult to grow because they can't provide the excellence that's necessary, and at the same time they can't provide the intimacy that comes from smaller churches. And so you see large churches are growing and small churches are growing. And also that over the last 40 years we're recognizing that churches that were begun before 1990 are on average shrinking. Those begun after 1990 are on average growing. And what this means for Evergreen is two things. First of all, we are in that category of larger churches that have the capacity to grow. We're also a church that was begun after 1990, and therefore we are at a ripe place to be able to reach out and touch lives in a way that many churches aren't. And so we have to ask ourselves, are we willing to do that for our community? Are we willing to take those steps forward to touch people's lives in a way that many other churches can't in our community because of their size or because of their age? And so I want to invite you again, as we think about these things, to be a people who look beyond ourselves, Project 32K beyond ourselves, and reach out into this community and use this building as a way of doing that. We also need to recognize that in Michigan, the number of people going to church is constantly shrinking. And so there are fewer people going to church. We have a church community of people in our community that need the church. And so we're poised. We're in a place where we can do this for God and for His kingdom. And so what we want to do during Project 32K beyond ourselves is to ask ourselves, what kind of things might this new facility do? And we're talking about four things, really. We're talking about, first of all, hospitality. In the book of Hebrews, we're told that it's a good thing to provide hospitality because some have provided hospitality to angels unawares. And so we're looking at our community and we're saying, who needs hospitality in our community? What community organizations can we reach out to? What schools might need our facilities? How can we touch the lives generally in our community and provide hospitality for them? The second part is living beyond ourselves. And what we want to recognize is that the children of Evergreen are educated in this place, taught in this place, not simply so they can know more about God, get closer to God, but so they can participate in the mission of God. And right now, we look at our facilities and we recognize that we're limited in the spaces we can use for our kids, the ways that we can train our children. And so the addition opens up the door for us to train our kids, to help them become participants in the mission of God in a way that we're not able to do right now. The third piece of Project 32K is giving beyond ourselves. This is an opportunity to hear those words where it says, "Seek first the kingdom of God, and all these things will be added to you." And so this is an opportunity to give beyond ourselves, to ask what God might be calling us to think about giving in a way that reaches beyond what we thought was possible in our lives, and allowing that to grow us into better followers of Jesus. And then the fourth part of this is that we are seeking to reach beyond ourselves. In the Bible, it talks about God giving open doors. And the thing is that Evergreen has been given so many open doors into our community over and over again. As a matter of fact, if you look at Evergreen's outreach efforts, typically in Classis Georgetown, the group of churches that we are a part of, we account for half of the evangelism growth every year out of 19 churches. So God has given us open doors, and we want to make sure that we have the space available to keep those doors open, to keep bringing people in to Jesus Christ. So we've got these four things going on in Project 32K: hospitality, living beyond ourselves, giving beyond ourselves, and an open door into our world, into our community. Now, just so you know a little bit of where we have come from and why this is necessary right now for us. If you look at the slide, you'll notice that when we started in 2004 in this building, we had about 550 people in the congregation. In March of 2010, we had about 1,100 people who called Evergreen home. And now, about a year later, we have over 1,200 people who call Evergreen home. And so we are using a facility that was designed for about 1,000 people, and we're now housing around 1,200. And so our space is becoming more crowded, and again, it keeps us from hospitality. It keeps us from that open door. It keeps us from training our children the way that we want to. And so we're growing in that way. If you look at our recovery ministry, you'll see that when we moved into our new facility in November 2004, there were about 40 people involved in recovery meetings at Evergreen. Last year, March 2010, about 270 people involved in recovery meetings. This year, 350 to 400 people involved in recovery meetings. And so the ability to have facilities does not guarantee church growth, but it does allow a church to grow. And I just want you to think about that. Now, the next slide you'll see is the picture of our new addition to the facility. And as you look at that, you'll see a number of things. You'll see what's called a green room, which is a prep room for drama and art and all those kind of things that can be used in many different ways. There's a large classroom that can be split into half, but more importantly right now, it can also be another service venue for us that will allow us to have about 300 more people on a Sunday morning at worship. And then there are a number of other smaller classrooms that can be used by our different youth ministries, and a prayer room that can be open 24/7 because of the way the place is designed, so that people can constantly be praying for the needs of our world, our community, and of our local congregation. Project 32K. Small groups, thank you so much for this opportunity to step into your living room for a few moments and talk to you about it. I pray that you will understand the importance of this project, that you will hear God's call as He calls you to give to this project, and that together we can move forward in a wonderful way of moving beyond ourselves into a community that desperately needs Jesus Christ.
Don't you know, they're talking about a revolution, sounds like a whisper. Don't you know, they're talking about a revolution, sounds